Hi, and welcome back to Pediatric UK. In this episode, I am interviewing the amazing Maddie Deane. Now, Maddie is someone who has experienced a lot in the last few months and has basically been diagnosed with a disease that it remains hidden. And we're sort of going to discuss that and work through really what that's meant and how it's affected her. So as I say, welcome back to Pediatric UK. Before we go on, can you go hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell? You'll always know when I've got new content going online, and you'll help me hit that 10,000 subscriber mark, which would be just awesome. As I said before, we are interviewing the fantastic Maddie Deane. Maddie, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am very well. You're wearing a fantastic T-shirt, I must say. To put you in the picture, Maddie is partnered with the bass player from the Fallen State, who are obviously one of my favourite bands. I've known Maddie for a little while. Got myself into more awkward conversations with her dad, but that's another story for another time. we don't need to go there. My usual case of putting my foot in my mouth fairly firmly. Maddie has a remarkable story in that she has recently been diagnosed with a lifelong condition, and we're going to sort of delve into that and look at what that's meant for her. So, Maddie, how are you today?
I'm good today. Yeah, it's one of those where it just really varies day to day, but most of the time I'm good.
Do you want to sort of take us through your story? I guess. I mean, you went through basically a place where you didn't know what was going on. What was that? What was that about? What happened, and what was that like?
I guess to start with, I was just getting really bad stomach pains. It came on really quickly and it was really intense. It was like on my lower right side, so automatically your brain goes, "Oh, that's my appendix." Naturally rang 111 because it was the weekend, so I couldn't really do much else. They advised me to get to A&E within the hour. So yeah, got there pretty quickly, early Sunday morning. Yeah, they just said we did a few tests and things, and they decided that they thought it was appendicitis. Sent me down for surgery same evening. And yeah, it wasn't until they actually opened me up and realized, oh, we can't actually get to your appendix because your bowel's really inflamed. And yeah, that's when they started investigating a little bit more, but still weren't too sure what was going on. So yeah, it was quite a long period of it could be this, it could be that, it might be this, it might be that. So that's how it kind of started. And then eventually they realized that it was in fact Crohn's disease.
So it was Crohn's disease. How did that process come about? Because I mean, I followed this online. Obviously, you were sharing on Facebook quite openly about what you were going through. It seems to take an awfully long time to get there.
No, it definitely felt like forever. I think to start with, after that surgery, they put me on a liquid diet because they weren't really too sure what was going on. And it's called Modulin, and the whole point of it was to reduce inflammation and to hopefully, improve things. But after about 6 weeks on that, they put me in for a colonoscopy when they decided, we really do need to investigate and see what's going on. So during that, they found, again, it was just inflammation. It was just a whole load of inflammation going on. And yeah, they couldn't actually get the camera past this really inflamed part. So that's when they decided, this is actually quite serious. Unfortunately, that meant I had to carry on with the liquid diet. So I think that was a total of 12 weeks that I was on the stuff, literally nothing else. It was like a powder you mix up with water.
Yeah,
That
I've had it for diet reasons, but yeah,
yeah,
but yeah,
5 times a day just on that. And yeah, over Christmas wasn't the best either.
oh man, I hadn't actually picked that it was over Christmas, but yeah, that's because that's the time. Obviously, that's obviously family and stuff like that. So I guess everyone was concerned, everyone was worried.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think I came out of hospital, I think on the 23rd. So it was out just in time for Christmas. But yeah, I still enjoyed it. It's still nice to spend time with everybody. But yeah, wasn't ideal.
What was going through your head? I mean, I've had I had a situation last year where I was hospitalized very suddenly. Turned out I had a stomach ulcer. For me, it was a very scary moment in the sense that you kind of, I know it sounds extreme, but I think it's true. I was faced with my mortality, and I think probably you were in the same sort of a situation. What did that do? How did you feel about that? What was the mental process you went through when you suddenly confronted with this?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot to process, especially like, as I said, the night before I went into hospital, I was literally out for my staff Christmas meal. living life like a normal person, having a great time. And to start with, again, like I thought maybe it was the alcohol or maybe I'd eaten something and it just didn't agree with me. So to go from that to you've got inflammatory bowel disease is like a whole lot to process. They were pretty good, but when they're not too sure what's wrong with you, it's all the different things they list, and malignancy being one of them, or it could be a tumor, and it could be, and it's a lot. It's such a lot to take on and to really get your head around. And every single time someone came into that room and said, "Oh, how are you doing?" I just burst into tears. I didn't know what to think. I was like, I don't really know. I mean,
how do you answer that question? I love when you do that. It's like, I'm stuck in a hospital. I don't know what's wrong. What the hell do you think?
I'm in pain. I've just had surgery. You've told me I can't eat for 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. Get me a freaking burger now.
Literally. So it is a lot. And they were really good and they were really informative of, all the things I had to do. And then obviously after being on the liquid diet, it was, now you've got to be on a low fiber diet, because I actually had 2 lots of surgery. I had the first surgery when they thought it was appendicitis just before Christmas, after my Christmas meal. And the second was in March, like mid-March. So that's when they eventually decided we need to do something about that blockage that we'd seen in the colonoscopy. The only thing that we reckon we can do is literally operate, take it out. So it meant it was mainly my large intestine that was affected. So they cut part of my small bowel, cut part of my large bowel, and joined the 2 back together.
What's the long-term effect of that? Like, that's been done, that obviously solves some issues, but what's the sort of side effects of that, I guess, or the long-term consequences?
Yeah, well, it's likely I'll probably need surgery again in the future. Currently, they haven't put me on any medication. I've been back since, and I can't even tell you how many hospital doctors' appointments, blood tests, and everything I've had in the meantime. But they don't feel like I need medication currently, because of the surgery, they've got that mass has been removed, and that is the part that they tested it. That's how they confirmed it was Crohn's. So the surgeon said to me, it's likely you'll be okay for a while. And with Crohn's disease, it's usually only one area where it occurs, whereas obviously other forms of IBD, which is ulcerative colitis, it can be different parts of the bowel. They think I'll be okay for a little while, but it's most likely that it will reoccur in that same place. Yeah. So likely where they've joined it back together. So that's scary in itself. And every time I get some little pain or something, I'm like, what if it's split? What if it's a hernia? Is it coming back? It's a lot to get your head around.
I can imagine. And I guess every time something happens now, there's that something going on in the back of your head that goes, is this the worst case scenario? Is something wrong? Yeah. It's a lot to live with, isn't it? Like knowing my wife, and she doesn't have Crohn's, but she has bowel issues like this. Yeah. And it is that thing of there's a constant reminder there and a constant fear. Because you go out to dinner and suddenly you don't feel good. I can imagine it's a massive weight that sits on you of, do I need to call the hospital? Do I need to get it? What's that process like? I mean, for you, actually, probably a good place to go right now is actually, what is Crohn's disease?
Crohn's disease itself is an autoimmune disease, which means my body is essentially attacking the healthy tissue within my intestines, which leads to, all sorts of problems and symptoms like diarrhea, stomach pain, weight loss, fatigue. Brain fog is a massive one for me. That is one thing since I've really noticed that.
That's something you don't hear about that much. So the brain fog, that must be quite confronting at times.
It is, especially at work. Like, obviously, where I work in a cafe and we're quite busy at the moment with it being, the summer period, but I have to quite often switch roles. So sometimes I'm in the kitchen, and if someone needs serving on the counter and I'm not busy, I'll go out there. But I find it really hard to suddenly switch from the other and stand there and people telling me their orders. And I'm like, I actually don't even know what day it is. I don't know what it is you're asking of me. That's quite a tough one, the brain fog. And it makes me quite forgetful as well. And I've noticed since then, I write a lot down, shopping lists, everything like that. I have to write it down or I will just forget about it. And even like daily tasks and things that I want to get done in the day, I find if I write them down, it's easy to work through it. Otherwise I just spend the whole day going, oh, I meant to do that, but that'll have to wait.
That's my life anyway. I'm
Yeah.
getting older though. It's going to be a very smooth decline into Alzheimer's for me. I genuinely think that's going to be quite a smooth transition. Once you've sort of gone through that, what I want to dig to is you've experienced this, and I think we talk about disease on a level of it's something that's physical.
Mm-hmm.
But often we forget about the mental impact that this stuff can have. We see it on ads like you see the Macmillan ads and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
the effects on people. But whenever you've got anything wrong with you, it can have a tremendous impact on your mental health. How was it in that period for you?
It's just one of those where I like to think I'm quite a positive person, but there's only an extent of how positive you can be with that kind of thing. It really is such a lot to get your head around. But once it's kind of explained to you, this is what it is, this is what it does, this is how your life's going to look. I think once you initially get over that shock, I think you come to terms with it, you learn to live with it. As I said, it's still relatively new for me right now, so I'm sure there's going to be a whole load of challenges that I'm going to face like coming up. But I think you've just got to take it day by day. Every day is so different, and I think also the thing with Crohn's is it's so different person to person as well. So just because one person is, cracking on and everything's fine, and again, they don't look sick, you wouldn't know anything's wrong with them. Someone else could be literally in the middle of a flare up and having all the symptoms possible and really, really, ill and ending up in hospital again. So it's a tough thing to know that could happen as well. And it's how do you avoid it? It's really hard because you think, well, if I do this and if I do that, I'll be fine. And there's so many people that, again, don't quite understand it. And that's another reason for doing this is I want to, explain what it is and help people understand it better. And when you try and say to people, I've got inflammatory bowel disease, it's, oh, well, if you do this diet and if you do yoga and reduce stress and you do this and eat that and don't do this and don't eat that, you'll be fine, you'll cure it. But there is no cure.
There is, this obviously this channel, what we discuss normally is sort of the neurodivergent side of things. But it's something that's so relatable because that's something that comes up so often with neurodivergence is that, there's a cure or you do this and it lessens this and all that kind of stuff. I find it so frustrating and difficult when people are saying, oh, well, they're trying to give a reason for it occurring. Oh, well, there must have been some trauma at birth or something like that. Yeah. Or did you vaccinate your kids? Well, yes, we did, but that's, all that kind of crap. But people, I think genuinely from a place they want to help.
Yeah.
It's often that sort of deer in the headlights look, isn't it? It's like, what do I say here? Oh, well, if you do this, you'll be fine. It has such an impact no, you've got to understand, I've got this for life. How do you reflect that back?
It's such a difficult thing. And I've been faced with it a few times already. Like people saying, oh, well, if you just make sure you eat healthy, do this, do that. And it's like, I want to go off on one and be like, well, actually, these are the things that I am doing. This is what I've been told to do. That's not going to fix it. This is how it is. But, sometimes it is just easier to be like, oh, yeah, no, I hadn't thought of
that yet. I haven't spent 39 days searching the internet for possible ways of... And it is a difficult one because I think genuinely people are coming from the right place and that they want to help. But there's also this sort of point where you need to be able to educate and say, actually, look, this is lifelong. This isn't something that's going to go away. It's not something that can be cured.
No, especially when even the medical professionals don't know the reason why your body is attacking itself.
I mean, I can relate in the sense that I have a condition called autoimmune thyroiditis, which is where my immune system is an autoimmune disease again, attacks my thyroid. The reason I gained so much weight in my earlier years was that my thyroid was just trying to function while being attacked by immune system, and it was getting nowhere. But obviously that not on the same level as what you're experiencing, but it is that kind of thing when your body's working against itself. It's kind of traumatic to deal with mentally as well, that this is something the body's doing to itself.
Well, as I said, like when you feel fine in yourself as well, and it's like, well, how is this happening? And I haven't even known about it. Like this is the other thing, like I have no idea how long that's been going on for. Looking back at it now, when they tell you there's all these other symptoms, that are maybe slightly less common, like joint pain. I was getting such bad inflammation in my knees, maybe 2019, I think that started. And I thought, one knee would be so swollen to the point I couldn't walk on it. It was so painful and it was so tight that I couldn't bend it. And the doctors decided at the time that, I've forgotten the name of it.
This is the brain fog we were talking about.
Exactly. Like, I tell people about it all the time. Bursitis. There you go.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, bursitis, because it's the bursa sac around the kneecap that gets inflamed. But looking back at it now, it's like, well, is that a side effect of this? And has it been going on for quite a while? And, since my surgery, everyone sort of said, well, why don't you keep a food diary? Gastroenterologists, dietitians say, let's keep a food diary. See if there's any foods that trigger anything. And if you start getting symptoms again, then, try that food again. And if it still does it, cut it out. I've been doing that food diary now since middle of March, and I've not felt anything affect me. But looking back at it now, I genuinely think it was stress that caused it. You can't pinpoint it, and there could have been, plenty of other contributing factors. But I've been on the Crohn's and colitis forum on Facebook, and so many people have said, I think it's stress, and 99% of the comments following it, yes, stress triggers mine. Stress is what causes my flare-ups. So even though they're still looking into if that's a viable thing, and there's no real hard evidence to say yes, stress causes Crohn's or triggers flare-ups and things, to be able to see the amount of other people that feel the same way, at least you don't feel like you're going crazy.
Absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense in that, like, you feel part of something again, don't you? And it's like,
yeah, completely.
Actually, the fact that other people are experiencing this makes it so much easier to accept that might be something that's triggering it. And we live in a world that's remarkably stressful, though.
Yeah,
and I think it's something people don't realize when you actually compare what we live with every day. We're constantly bound to our work. We're a mobile phone call or we're a text message away. We're constantly sort of under a pressure, I think, at a level that people in the world haven't experienced before. How are you managing to balance that side of things with, if you're aware that stress is a trigger for this?
Yeah.
Have you been
it's just been one of those things where it's finding what you think may cause the stress. And I'm really lucky that with my job, like, honestly, my bosses, my colleagues are absolutely amazing. And even when I was recovering from surgery, it's all, I couldn't lift things, obviously, for 8 weeks or so. But we're all just like a little family. So everyone's willing to help out. And that in itself eliminates stress and the guilt of like, oh goodness, everyone's having to like do so much extra for me. But being able to ease back into that in itself was taking a lot of stress away, because I need to work, I need money, I need to live, I've got bills to pay.
Yeah.
And that in itself was a huge thing to, especially having 2 lots of surgery within 3 months. That in itself is stressful, but then it's like, I don't want to get stressed out and I'm back in hospital again. So it's like, it is a bit
cycle continues.
Yeah, I think when you're aware of a few things that might set you off, obviously it's like stressful situations, people that don't necessarily help the situation, distancing yourself from all these things is a good way to eliminate the stress. And you can't completely rule it out. There's things that are gonna stress you out, but if you can figure out what it is, it definitely helps.
One thing that I picked up as you were going through this, obviously, because we know each other, and there's been able to follow this on Facebook and what you're going through. One thing I did pick up on was that family were an amazing support for you.
Absolutely.
How did that feel? What was the process there for you guys?
The weirdest thing for me with that as well is that obviously I live in Devon and all my family are actually in Sussex. I've got a close family friend who I call my uncle, who lives just around the corner from us. But, Greg, my fiance, obviously was amazing, did so much for me while I was recovering. His mum and dad, absolutely brilliant, even just helping me with the dog. All these things that you don't realise, you take for granted as just everyday things that you're so used to being able to do, and not being able to do these things for yourself. I like order, I like control. So not being able to touch anything and do anything, and having to let someone else do it in a different way, that in itself is a lot to let go of. But yeah, no, everyone was amazing. I think Greg formed a group chat with all my family back in Sussex, so that any little updates. I think it's actually called Maddie Updates. Anything that was happening, especially while I was in hospital in the earlier days of it all, everyone was getting updated as often as they could, and people were aware of I'm in and out of, I think I was so morphined up I didn't quite know what was going on a lot of the time. Yeah, they were all just amazing, and everyone was just checking what they could do for me. And I think, you know, one of my cousins, bless her, she bought me a couple of like shaker bottles so that when I could make up the modulin, I was like, what am I supposed to put this in? You don't want to shake it up. It's like a protein shake, basically. You don't want lumps and horrible bits in it. And
yeah,
so having that, and, you know, they said be brave on, and I thought that was quite sweet. Because again, like, if I'm going to have to drink this stuff 5 times a day, I want to at least enjoy the bottle I'm drinking it from. Oh, I gotta try and look forward to it somehow. Like, I don't want to just be sat there like, oh great, another.
I'm surprised Greg didn't market a Fallen State mixing bottle, because that would have been
No, but even that, you know, like, that was a massive challenge. I know it sounds ridiculous, but obviously, like, not having to cook for yourself, like, it was nice not cooking, but it gets to the point of like, oh God, I've got to make this up again. And I just actually really resented scooping this powder into these things. I did manage to make it easier for myself. Like, I think I only had 2 to start with, so I was constantly having to wash them up, make more. But I managed to get about 5 bottles, so I could do them all before I'd go to bed, keep them in the fridge, then they'd all be ready. But that in itself was just a process of just standing there constantly counting the scoops and measuring out the water. It all had to be so precise. That was draining in itself.
Because that's a side that people don't think about as well, isn't it? That you get something like this, or this becomes something that you're aware that you have, I guess,
Yeah.
is really more accurate. There's a massive shift in lifestyle that comes from it. This translates to so many different things, but it's like the life that you kind of had, you kind of have to start sort of, I think you go through a mourning process almost of, this is who I was and this is who I am now.
Yeah, completely. Especially with like the social side of things. It's so easy for someone to just go, oh, let's go grab a coffee, let's go get lunch, let's go, I don't know, get breakfast. And it's like, oh wait, you can't do that. Or, oh, come over for a takeaway. And it's like, I can't do that either. I can bring my modulin and, you know.
I'll sit there and sip on it while I watch you eat the pizza, you bastards.
No, I don't mind doing that. I'd rather do that and see people and not feel stuck at home and like isolated because of it. But yeah, I remember the whole time thinking, I just want a kebab. Like, that's all I want. I literally just want a kebab and macaroni cheese. Give me these things and I'll be fine. It's not the Christmas dinner. I didn't care about Christmas dinner, but mac and cheese and kebabs.
Mac and cheese and kebabs. You know what? It's those things, isn't it? It's like, I know from going on weight loss and stuff like that. My family are dreadful because they still want their takeaways, and I'd sit there, I'd be eating like you say, drinking a protein shake while they're all sitting there munching down on pizza and burgers, and they're like.
Well, it's like, I remember Greg saying he felt awful. Like, obviously he still had to eat, and he's like, oh, if you want, I can go and sit in there, or I can have. And he said, as long as you're not eating mac and cheese in front of me, I get it. Like, there were days where I was like, oh, can I literally like to have pepperoni pizza or something? Like, can I literally just have like the tiniest little bit? I just need to taste it. And, you know, probably shouldn't have done that, but I just.
You're human.
How do you get through it? It's not going to kill me.
At least he wasn't sort of like, I'm really sorry, babe.
No. That's it. Honestly, he felt awful. But as you say, like, you've still got to eat, you've still got to survive. So.
One of the really cool things I watched actually as this progressed for you was actually I feel like in a way this kind of brought you and Greg a lot closer.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, it's like stupid things like when you get home from hospital and it's like, I can't move, I can't do this, and can't even take the dog for a walk. Even she doesn't pull or anything on the lead, but you know, there'll be the one time where she'll see a bird or a cat and
squirrel.
I don't want to risk it. So it's like, you know, he's having to do a lot more. And I think, I don't know, not that I do a lot, like we both do a lot in the house, but it's almost an appreciation for the things I was having to do. And it's like an appreciation for someone else being able to do these things. And, you know, even like getting in that, like our showers, like over the bath, and it's like having to even be able to step over the bath. I was having to have a chair in there so I could even dry myself off. And it's like, you know, standing there like, can you dry my feet, please? Sorry, my feet.
I'm getting flashbacks to the Last Supper here. Yeah.
just, yeah, all these little things that you really do take for granted. And
I think that's the key, isn't it? It's the taking things for granted. And it's one of the things about clearly what you have is a hidden disability
yeah,
that you're aware of, and people don't see it. But it's one of those things that most people in life go through life quite fine, and then disability is visited upon them one
yeah.
way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people go through it that don't, you don't realize at some point you're likely to become disabled in one way or another, where it be an accident, or it could be something, disease, something that happens to you, whatever the case may be. So many, you might be blinded, you might be deafened. There's so many ways it can happen. Once you're in that place, being able to rely on someone and actually, there is a chance there to sort of bring things together in a way that is quite beautiful, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. We were still trying to get out and do stuff. Like, it was our 5-year anniversary during all of this while I was on modular. Most people would just go and celebrate by having dinner somewhere nice. And it's like, now what do we do? Like, obviously, we got engaged in September. So for us, that 5-year anniversary, we wanted to celebrate everything. We actually went to Exeter. They had an exhibition on, and it was like, typically, I don't know if that's something we would have done, but it was amazing. It was amazing. And went bowling. And again, we'd never been bowling together before, but it's, how can we make this memorable, and how can we still do something without it involving food? All these little things that is just like, even gigs. I was gutted that I missed a gig because of my surgery, the most recent one. The band I've been wanting to see for ages, and I couldn't go. I kept thinking, I might be okay 5 days post surgery. All I've got to do is sit in the car to get to Cardiff, sit in the seat and watch the gig. This is another thing people probably don't think about with inflammatory bowel disease, especially after having surgery. That sense of urgency, like, I've never known anything like it. The whole poo taboo, no one wants to talk about it. This is
Let's talk shit. Yeah.
This is what my life is now. But it's true, like, everywhere I was going, I was like, okay, I need to know where the toilet is, because who knows what's going to happen. And since then, I've got a can't wait card. And that's another thing, even at work, like, we have the one toilet, and I am dreading that time in the summer where the queue is going out the door. Not for queuing to order, queuing for the toilet. Yeah. I'm literally just going to have to go out there and like say, I'm really sorry, I've got inflammatory bowel disease. Like, can't wait. I have to go. I haven't had to implement that yet, but again, like, that's something that gives me this anxiety, like, mentally.
And that's it. I know this not from my own experience, but obviously, as I said, my wife has, and we get this sort of thing, and it's like that sudden need. We have to plan almost any trip we do around the availability of toilets, because you just don't know when it's going to hit and what's going to need to be done.
No, and it's scary. It is scary. Like, I've not had anything be like that urgent yet, luckily, like, or I've been close enough that it's not been a problem. But we've been out having a drink somewhere or whatever, and it's like, it's stupid. Like, you don't want to go in public, but sometimes you have no choice. But even then, I remember saying to Greg, we need to go. And it was like, speed walk to the car, get back home, because I don't want to go in public.
I've genuinely experienced it, as I say, in an adjacent form, but it is that sort of, and I think that, again, bringing it back to that mental well-being and mental health side of things. I know for my wife, it's a dramatic thing, because it's like, I'm scared to go out and actually enjoy myself. I'm scared to go out and have a meal with friends, because you don't know where it's going to go. And it's another layer of anxiety that you're just piling on top of what's already a hard ride.
Yeah, but this is the thing, that's another reason why I want to talk about it. I think people are embarrassed to talk about it and scared to talk about it, as are the symptoms for, like, IBD. Like, some people experience blood in their stool. They don't want to go to the doctors because they find it embarrassing. But honestly, I've been poked, prodded, cameras, God knows where. And like, I feel like, having been through that, I would quite happily go through any test that I have to have. Like, at the end of the day, I would rather know that everything's been checked out, they know what's going on, and any issues that do come up can be treated, and I'm not going to get worse, hopefully. So I'd much rather go through that and tell everybody what's going on. But you don't know how many other people it's going to help. And I wouldn't say I'm an oversharer. I don't like putting things like that on social media all the time. And I've had pictures of my scars. I've got like 5 scars now, and that's a massive thing. Body image, all the rest of it. Like, I'm not the sort of person that goes around flaunting things anyway. But for me, knowing that my body's changed, and obviously having lost loads of weight being on Modulin, to putting it back on since I've eaten, that's a lot to come to terms with. And trying to feel comfortable with yourself whilst trying to battle everything else you've got going on. Having put everything on social media, so many people have reached out to me and said, oh, I've got this symptom and I've got to go and have a colonoscopy, and what's that been like? And
it is
being
a
able to
taboo
share it.
subject, isn't it? And it's something we get embarrassed about it, but it's like so many things. Once we start opening up about it, I found it with the neurodivergent community, and I get in it seems that everywhere I go now, I get in a conversation with someone knows someone who's got a neurodivergent condition of some description or another. Once you start talking to people about it, it's like you realize it's so much more common than people realize. But because it's a taboo subject in so many ways, mental health is a taboo subject in so many ways. People don't want to admit they're struggling and they're through something. But when it's bodily function stuff, it's sort of another layer to that, isn't it?
I even break wind around people, like. So, it's one of those things. It's like, I feel like I have to tell everyone at work. It's like, if I suddenly disappear, like, I'm sorry, it's not my fault, but I do generally want everyone to be aware of it. And it's like, I don't want to be telling everybody the reasons why, but it definitely helps like normalize it. And
and I think it's that thing, isn't it? Normalizing something, it takes away the taboo, and actually, once people are able to open up a conversation about something like this, it generally invites a lot more people. Oh, I can talk about this a bit more freely now.
Yeah, completely. And it's not the nicest thing to talk about, but I'd rather talk about it and be okay about it.
I've been accused frequently of talking shit, so it's,
That's the thing. If you can joke about it, that's like, great.
This is a hidden condition, so for most people, they're going to see you. Anyone watching this will look at you and go, "Perfectly healthy young lady. What's the problem?"
Yeah.
But when you've got a hidden disability, it's something that is there. I think it adds another challenge. Like, I'm so involved with the disabled community now in different ways. But I do think there's a layer with hidden disability that, because it's unseen. So if you need to rush and you need to use a disabled toilet, people may judge that on the basis that, well, she's running to the toilet. How can she be disabled?
Yeah.
How's that something that you're you're dealing with, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I did get myself a radar key as well as getting the can't wait card, so that I haven't had to use it yet, but we went away with Greg's parents not so long ago camping, and even then it's like toilet blocks. It's like, okay, we were close to it, but it's like I didn't really think about it prior to us going, and it wasn't until we got there I thought, oh my God, if there's like loads of people in there and there's a queue, I was like, I don't want to have to put myself in that position of, now what do I do? Turns out the radar key didn't actually fit the disabled toilet anyway. So I did have to, they had their own, obviously, that they give out to people. But even then, it's like I was fully prepared to have to explain myself and tell them what was wrong with me, because I didn't want them to have to stand there and going, really? You need the disabled queue? You sure? Like, you've just walked over here, like, you look fine. But, they didn't question it, and I'm grateful for that. It's such a weird thing to get your head around, knowing that you look fine and having to explain it to people. And again, telling everyone what's wrong with you, and people looking at you in that way of like, well, you look fine.
You don't look like you've got Crohn's disease.
That's another thing though. Then it's like, I don't want to go on about it too much. I don't want to have to feel like I need to tell people all the time, but then it's like, I want to make people aware of it because I think it's important, and because people might have the symptoms and be too embarrassed to do anything about it. So it's like finding this balance of, I don't want to have to tell everybody, oh, actually I'm disabled, or I've got Crohn's disease and I've got this and I've got that. But sometimes I feel like I have to do that because I don't want to get judged, and I don't want them to look at me funny like, well, what are you doing that for? And
yeah, absolutely.
It's a hard one.
Sometimes it's another complex layer to the whole mental health issue, isn't it? Because it's just another anxiety, another stress that is to that.
I wouldn't say before any of this, like, I probably wasn't really an anxious person, but now it's like all these other worries, and like I said, in the future, what's that going to look like, and how are other things going to affect me going forwards? And like you say, with everyone, you look fine.
Maddie, I really enjoyed this. Just to hear, enjoy's the wrong word. I've enjoyed hearing about your suffering and pain.
Yeah, good.
I'm just a bastard. This has just been so enlightening in hearing from someone who's had to go from being healthy to suddenly being confronted with this, and your openness and willingness. For anybody watching, if they're going through something similar, what was the thing that helped you the most to get through the process of diagnosis and getting to coping with the change in your life that this has affected?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like the Crohn's and Colitis UK charity website has so much helpful information on there, and that helped me understand it. And this is the thing, when I was first told you've got Crohn's disease, it's like, okay, well, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what that entailed. I didn't know how it was going to affect me. And I was literally just like left to deal with it. I found out via a letter uploaded online to a portal and had no one to talk to about it, no professionals to give me any advice, speak to an IBD nurse and do this. And it's like, okay, but how do I go down those channels? But to be able to find that information, that for me was crucial to actually be able to understand it and try to process it. So yeah, the Crohn's and Colitis UK charity website. There's another one called Get Your Belly Out as well. That was quite helpful. I think I found that through Facebook. They've got a Facebook page and they've got a list of all the symptoms and a poster I've even put up at work from them just in the toilet work. It might help someone else. And I just think if I did maybe had the prior knowledge, and typically I didn't really have the symptoms, that was another reason I didn't think I'd even got it. I didn't really have the symptoms. So if you do have the symptoms, like I think it's so important that make an appointment with GP. And I know a lot of people, it's very easy for the GP to just say, oh, well, it's just IBS. Off you go, here's a leaflet. But if you really think there is something, like, you just got to push for those answers and just persevere with it, because you don't know what's wrong and it could really help you in the future.
I will put links in the description to those charities and organisations, and you can check that out if you need to. Maddie, thank you so much, and genuinely thank you for being so open about what's quite a difficult subject to approach in so many ways.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me, honestly. I really appreciate
You're
it.
very, very welcome. We'll leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us. Please do go hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll always know when new content's going up. I will see you again on the next episode, but please, in the meantime, stay safe.